In this lecture module, we'll be shifting our focus from Plato towards Aristotle. The relationship between Plato and Aristotle is one of a complicated intellectual legacy. However, for the purposes of exposition, I'll be oversimplifying that relationship significantly. One of the first things that we'll notice about Aristotle is that he's returning to a physicalistic, monistic ontological framework. For Aristotle, the world is a world of substances. However, Aristotle does bring Plato's concept of form into his monistic ontological framework. His world of substances, of individual objects that fall into kinds, is analyzed or understood in terms of two analytic components, probably neither of which he thought existed independent of substance. Substances are a composite, a hyleomorphic composite of matter and form. His primary metaphor for thinking about his hyleomorphism is the relationship between parts and wholes. And thus we find him talking about artifacts and talking about biological kinds a great deal. In fact, Aristotle's existent corpus is about 25% devoted to biology and zoological studies. Or Aristotle, what it is to be some particular instance of a general kind is to be a composite of matter and form. So for instance, if we think about what it is to be a cart is a composite of matter, the wood, the iron, and so on, together with the form, the arrangement of that basic material into the structure that serves this function. Like Plato, Aristotle strongly associates the human soul with the mind and with reason. But unlike Plato, his primary orientation in his theorizing is ontological. Aristotle wants to understand the world and how the world operates. Like Plato, Aristotle supposes that we understand what it is to be a particular kind of thing by understanding its essential nature, by understanding how it is matter informed, the essential nature of its category. Aristotle also builds upon the idea of differentiating out the nature and functions of the elements of the mind. Because Aristotle is thinking about the world in terms of real physical objects operating in accordance with real physical principles, Aristotle tries to understand how the mind works using physiological models. In particular, Aristotle engaged in dissection of, for instance, Barbary macaque monkeys and other animals. He didn't dissect humans that we know of. And he tries to extrapolate from those dissections an understanding of the physicalistic mechanisms, the parts and their relationships that subserve the mind, the body, and their interaction with one another. However, Aristotle's efforts in this regard are thwarted, as will be the efforts for many, many centuries, by a dearth of anatomical and physiological knowledge, together with the utter absence of an experimental and methodological tradition within anatomy and physiology. As a result, we see Aristotle too falls into a sort of tenuous dualism, an inability to properly categorize the mind or soul within his overall monistic ontological framework. Aristotle goes on to distinguish between the souls of plants, which he assigns the functions of nourishment and reproduction, the souls of animals, with which he associates the functions of perception and ambulation, and the souls of human beings, to which he assigns the functions of reason and intelligence. Based upon his anatomy and physiology studies, he tries to differentiate between the seat of reason in the human body. His two candidates are the heart and the brain, both of which are part of interconnected systems. The heart with the artery and vascular systems, and the brain with the central nervous system. However, Aristotle's knowledge of anatomy goes no farther, and he ultimately decides that the seat of reason must be in the heart, that it is the heart that's responsible for coordinating bodily motions in light of the dictates of reason, and that it must be the brain that serves as a radiator, spoiling away waste energy that's generated by the fire inside the heart.